Hello, this is Jade from Jaded Artistry Studios, or just Jaded Studios. Most people just call me Jade, or maybe even Kitten Pause a Third if you come to my rare streams. Today, I just wanted to make this video to sort of go over this painting that I've been working on. It has taken a long time, nearly 11 hours of work individually, and I wanted to sort of walk through the process and give some people some insight on what I'm working on and how the process sort of works and what things look like. So I worked on this piece a little bit earlier and before I had the idea of actually recording it, so there might be sort of the beginning process not missing, but I ask you just give me a little leeway as I sort of go through everything and give a good explanation of how the sort of work is done. So let's get on to it. To start, you might notice that the painting is completely in grayscale versus how the end product might look. Yes, so I found when working on this painting, the thing that stopped me a lot before I got to start actually doing it is the fact that I was like, I don't know how to do the colors. I can't figure it out. A lot of the references and everything that I looked at were fully colored pieces, and I just could not figure out how to get it down. So I sort of took some of them, I made them grayscale as is, or some of them were already grayscale, and I started working through it. So in this case, I'm going to start working on some part of the focal parts of the painting. So I'm working with Trace here, and he's a black colored character. He's a dark colored black snow cat, from my book, and he doesn't really reflect a lot of light colors very well on his fur, to be reasonable. They don't look like markings if I just put white on him. So I wanted to sort of put in those gray tones and more mid-tones to show light on an otherwise darker character and use those shadows to detail the fur and what have you. And you can kind of see how that's going in the painting. And as well as I'm sort of doing this sort of color over method where I'm putting everything on one layer. I'm not separating it out so I can blend everything together more easily. And this is just something I've done over painting more and more. However, I understand the through line of being I want everything separate so it's not overlapping, but that just makes a lot of file space a lot of the time, and sometimes your computer can't handle it. So consider merging layers every now and then. But mostly this is just to clean up everything and make it all look nice in the space around it. The lines and what have you. And the sort of idea in this painting is to have them sort of running through in this way that it draws the eye from Trace all the way up to Vala. So I have him running at an angle that helps that. And then I just finish up and then move to Vala. So Vala is a little bit different than Trace, but still similar sort of mindset. Paint over and then try and block out the lighter colors for her since she's in a lighter place, and it also reflects the two characters in their placement / lighting in this piece. Once I finish with her, I just move straight on to the background, not the background more, so the foreground. I'm trying to get the sort of front piece of the painting done first. And here you can kind of see me working on the grass and getting it around her and stuff. This is specifically why I had to put her and Trace on different layers, because there's going to be stuff behind and in front of them. So to start with doing the grass, I block out the colors of the area, covering over the base sketch, because it was just for an idea of what the area would look like, and then starting to get all those colors down. And at this time, I didn't have a proper grass brush for myself, and so I had to paint 95% of the strands of grass by myself, by hand, and it was not fun, I'll tell you that, but I ended up doing it. And here you can see I'm trying to go from the back into the front, because I want the stuff that's going to be under the other things it has to be there first before I can do the stuff that's going to be in front. Obviously, that's how it works. Those flashes of color are just me sort of just testing out how it looks and gradient maps and everything, but mostly just for pleasure to be like, oh, it looks this amount of done, because, But yeah, so the process is just going through, painting over those spots, and then getting it out. Here you can see I'm cleaning up the bank a little bit for the river, and we'll go over the river later, but generally just putting down stuff and getting all the grass and everything, the smaller foliage details out. And this is very easy in grayscale, so I don't have to worry about it being this color and that color. Here I'm working on the bush and the foliage in the foreground just to sort of give it some character. I'm relying heavily on some references to sort of give me an idea of how this sort of stuff might look. Obviously, I'm doing a lot of the work on my own. However, the references always help. And this is why I encourage it so much in every thing I say when people are like, oh, what should I do to get better? Look at references. Look at people whose art is good. And you're like, I want that part in my art. And then put that part in your art. Blocking out some leaves and stuff like that. And this area is sort of darker. So I'm trying to really play with the variance in the grayscale here, but keeping it in the darker tones to still have it be in the foreground. And then onto some rocks and stuff like that. The rocks in this painting are better than I've done rocks before, I would say. I've had a few pieces where I've painted rocks and I just did crazy with them. And then here more cleanup with a trace. And generally this is where I found the grass brush, and I'm sort of going over and fixing a lot of things, making my life easier, and then moving on to more rocks, which are, if you want to learn how to start getting into painting, I say start with rocks because they're so easy to paint. Lots of flat shapes that you combine together. And then here I'm adding a little bit of extra detail with some flowers and stuff. There was this sort of through line that I wanted to leading your eyes straight from Trace all the way to Vala and then to the piece writ large. And those flowers kind of help, I feel like. And I am distinctly avoiding the river in this because I have my greatest enemy when it comes to painting is water. But here I'm working on painting the trees and what have you, mostly in the foreground. I move on to the background later, but I'm trying to get everything in the front sort of section area. And you kind of see how it's divisioned up via the light in the situation. This right now is the mid-ground area, and it's a lot of more of a smaller area. So I'm working on that, getting the brush and leaves and everything. Everywhere in a forest, there's trees, there's bushes, there's undergrowth. You gotta paint that in for paintings like this. Unfortunately, it can be tedious, but most of the time it's rewarding in the end. So I'm trying to add some variance because it can't all be just leaf and bush brush. I'm trying to do some hand painted more so things as well, especially with the trees. Everything from the foreground to the midground sort of has a good amount of detail. And one important part is that I wanted to sort of add a little bit more lighting in the background, so it's not just all black. So I have all this rim lighting around each of the trees and how they look and everything. So it sort of helps with that. Also makes the shading easier. Now I'm moving on sort of to the background. And in this art area, I go back to hand painting grass again, which is not my favorite, but I did it. Just for this read specifically. And then I have just the general other areas that I'm doing the smaller stuff for. And then I'm going to clean up the banks again and all that sort of stuff. And now I move on to the trees and the leaves. These are pretty easy. I have a brush for it. I think it looks nice. I erase a little bit and like do some by hand just to add on to the look of it. And I get the tree for the foreground done, and then we move on to the river. This part was very hard for me. I tried to figure it out. Eventually I came up with something, but there's a lot of iterations. Just trying to, the way that water works, and especially in areas where it's darker and lighter, water is very reflective. So in the lighter areas, it would technically be reflecting what is around it. And in the darker areas, it wouldn't so much. And also, it's like some areas it is very shallow, and some areas it's not so much. So it was very hard for me to try and figure out what the values would look like. I'm trying to separate the sort of the gray shapes and also make the water look distinct from just the sort of grass and everything. And I tried, working with it with color, and maybe that might help. I didn't find much success, but I tried pushing through and brute forcing it, getting some like highlights down. Like I said, water's very reflective. And now I'm just moving on to coloring the piece writ large. The majority of it is done, so I'm just trying to combine all the colors together and get something I like. I tried starting out with something big overall, but just went down to getting those sort of individual colors painted out. And you can kind of see where I'm grabbing from multiple different areas, specifically from like these references from Ovopack, and then some other references from like Night Riser. And the idea is to try and see what colors are being used in the lights and in the dark areas. And specifically for Ovopack, like the lighter areas have more warmer greens and other tones like oranges and stuff like that, while the cooler areas or the darker areas will have cooler colors. And that can be seen in like most of all the paintings. And I was like, I like this painting style. I want to try and use some of these colors in my parts of the painting. So this is what I'm trying to do, right? I'm painting in this stuff. I'm keeping the bright areas warmer and lighter, and I'm keeping the dark areas cooler and darker. There are still some, warm colors in there because I want the painting overall to have a sort of through line with the color. With the water specifically, like for the river, I paint it so it's blue and it sticks out a lot more. And then here I'm just getting Vala and Trace down. Their color, putting on the colors is very easy. It's just a quick overlay, paint on the colors, and then add some final details before sort of just cleaning up any dark areas and light areas, adding a few like little extra lines for detail and post-processing, and then adding things like the light rays and what have you. And then mostly it's done after that. You add a little bit of noise as well, and the painting looks magnifique. Well, that's it. I thank you for sitting around and listening to me explain this video and sort of go through it. If you have any extra questions or comments, you can leave it in the comments below, message me on Twitter or even Discord. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.